and welcome back to the OperaWire podcast. This is your co-host, David Salazar. I'm here with my co-host, Francisco Salazar, and we have a very special episode for you today. How's it going, Fran?
I'm doing well, ready for the holiday season. I'm in red, obviously, for Christmas spirit, but at the same time, always sad to see a year end. There's always so much to look back, but there's always so much to look forward to, so I'm excited.
And today we will look back at 2025 with two special guests. We have Jen Pyron, who is managing editor of OperaWire, and we have Afton Markay, who is the staff writer. Jen, Afton, how are you guys doing? Jen?
Doing really well. Happy to be here.
And you're joining us from?
Brooklyn.
All right. And Afton, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm here in Canada. It's very snowy and cold.
So obviously our audience members are getting to know you for the first time and definitely not the last. But I guess we wanted to kind of open this conversation with both of you just to kind of get to know how you both got into the opera world. Let's start with Jen.
The opera world opened up to me when I was 9. I started taking voice lessons and I dabbled in, musicals, but my voice really fit more of the opera genre, and I ran with it. I loved feeling the emotions. I loved resonating with the music, and I've just been addicted ever since. I love singing Mozart. I just feel like it's medicine for my voice. I also absolutely love art song cycles. So Foray is definitely my number one. And just that movement of emotionality through an art song cycle makes me feel like I'm connected to what the composer intends, which then also goes into opera. And that's what I really look for when I experience an opera.
You kind of like do experimental, independent kind of music as well on the side, right? You also compose, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. So I purchased a Korg MS-2000 digital analog synthesizer in 2016 and started meditating with it. I just wanted to reconnect with my voice in a different way. And I feel like experimental electronic music and improvising with my local community has really opened up an entire universe that I was missing out on before. So, yeah.
And what about you, Afton? How did you come to opera?
So I came to opera when I was 16. I had been playing piano my whole life, but I wanted to try something new, and I went to a voice lesson, had no idea that I was getting into opera. She handed me the 24 Italian songs and arias book, and there was no going back. Like I had that assumption, like, oh, I can't sing. But I found that my voice, like you were saying, Jen, really fit like the operatic style. And I just fell in love with all of it, the performance and like the feeling I got from singing. And so I ended up doing a vocal performance in college. And yeah, I just, no going back. Yeah, I love singing Mozart. I love seeing different productions, and had a little bit of directing of Mozart, which has been fun for like kids operas and stuff. Um, but I also really love folk music, so like John Jacob Niles and the more like classical side of folk music.
Both of you love Mozart. Francisco is not a lover of Mozart. Yeah, I just find that very interesting. I personally do love Mozart's work, so yeah, this is awesome. Like I said before, it's awesome to have you on the show. We've been wanting to do this for a bit, and we felt that this would be the perfect opportunity because all of us have had a wide range of operatic experiences this year, not only in the US, but I think internationally as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, I guess I wanna jump into a little bit about what are some of the opera performances or productions that really just stood out to you this year, and then we can just go from there. Let's start with you, Afton.
Yeah, so I didn't get to do as many performances this year as I usually do, as I was making an international move from the States to Canada, and starting grad school. So I haven't done a whole lot of like reviews or anything, but I did get to spend some time at Brevard Music Festival. And I got to see their performances, but I also got to talk to the young artists about different avenues within opera other than singing. So we talked about like arts advocacy, opera journalism. We talked about administration, like different areas that you can do within opera. So that was like a big thing that I did this year. And then since I've been in Canada, the university that I'm at is pretty close to Toronto. So they've pulled a lot of the Canadian Opera Company um, young artist ensemble to perform here. So the first performance that I went to in Canada was with Emma Pennell, and it was incredible. And
Oh.
yeah, no, it's been great to be this close to all of these really incredible artists.
Sorry, guys. Go ahead, Frank.
No, what's really interesting is being able to talk to young artists and speak to the avenues and stuff like that. Because I remember, I think it was last year that I went to a young artist program, and it was actually not young artists, it was for like high school students, and it was in Colorado, it was in Vail. And I was really inspired just by the fact that these were high school, elementary school, and like the energy and the excitement that these people had, these children, I guess these kids had for opera. So I'm always really inspired to just going back to and speaking to young artists. I can imagine the inspiration and being able to just talk to the young artists as well.
Yeah, I actually had one of my voice students come with me to the
Oh,
talk at
wow.
Brevard. I had mentioned like, oh, I have to move your lesson because of this, and she's like, can I please come? And so she sat through this whole talk and spent the day like with me, like interviewing singers and stuff. So yeah, I love the enthusiasm.
Jen, I know you traveled quite a bit this year. What are some of the highlights, operatic highlights of the year?
I had the honor of attending the Macerata Opera Festival in Italy, and it absolutely blew me away. Macerata reminds me of a Fellini film, whereas
Mm.
everyone in the community is a work of art, from the person that runs the local butcher shop to the most authentic restaurant that's there. And everyone that's walking along the streets, it's just so poetic. The festival itself is held in a beautiful outdoor arena that took my breath away. And during intermission, I went up to the top of the back wall and was able to just feel like I could reach up and touch the stars. So I felt that the setting in Macerata is unmatched with where I've been yet. I'm excited just to have that experience, but also to have seen Ruth Iniesta's performance as Gilda in Verdi's
Mm.
Rigoletto. Her presence on stage just brought tears to my eyes. Like anytime she was part of the production in any capacity, it was like her presence was so pure and so lyrical, and her voice just matched that authenticity that I felt in Macerata. I'll just never forget it. I felt like I was in a film.
I mean, I remember 2 years ago that I had gone to Verona, and it's another outdoor arena, and I think it's a little bit bigger, but there's just a magical experience of being in a setting like that, and so unpredictable. I don't know if you got any rain during the time we were there.
I didn't. However, I read a review of someone that was there either a week before or a couple of weeks, and there was this like massive thunderstorm that came through during Rigoletto, like the death scene.
Mm.
And I just thought like, I wish I was there for that because I love wild thunderstorms. But yeah,
That would have been incredible to witness, just the fusion of life and art at the same time. That would have been insane.
like the reality is the opera kept going. So everyone was just like ravenous to like continue this music and
Mm.
art and this sharing as a community of what and why everyone's there for. And that's to feel this experience together. So
Yeah, as a violinist, I probably would have been a little bit scared of the rain, but that's crazy. Any other highlights?
you know, I loved seeing the last castrato performance with the Versailles Royal Opera Orchestra. That was another level of performance. Their vast knowledge as a countertenor for the music at hand, but also how to present the music was historically informed, but also met with this very modern contemporary understanding. And I feel like a lot of times it's a very fine line of balance to be able to present historically informed music in a modern setting. And they just did the most remarkable job.
I mean, I went to Versailles many years ago. What is the experience of a concert in that venue?
Yeah, so an experience at Versailles is also unforgettable. I felt that, you know, being in the Chateau de Versailles is one thing, and it was my first time to be there. So that was its own experience, but the sound quality and the acoustics are so beautifully intentional that I could close my eyes and receive the highest level of sound in both the Royal Chapel and the main opera hall. So I felt like while, you know, that was constructed, you know, in a certain time, it had very modern listening acoustics that just made it feel like it's something that I could go, you know, into Lincoln Center and experience as well. Just very high quality.
That's incredible.
I had the
Incredible. Yeah.
opportunity to interview Franco Fagioli during the year, and I remember him talking about the album. I don't know if you got to read the interview. It was a
Yes.
very, for me, it was very eye-opening to like listen to how he thinks of his voice. And he said to me, and I remember that he said, I was trained in a different way from other countertenors, and this, and I don't necessarily consider myself as a Baroque singer, but trained in a more classical and more bel canto esque. So I've always really admired the fact, and I think this is something I had talked about, like, and I've had really enjoyed talking to singers this year. And I mean, I don't know about you or Afton or you, like, and Dave as well. Like a lot of the conversations I've had aren't necessarily about singers that are going a specific route this anymore. I feel like they're just taking their own paths based on how they feel their careers fit best. And I remember with him, it was like he does a lot of bel canto, which is not necessarily something that you expect of a countertenor. And it was like this tenor, Pablo Garcia Lopez, that I spoke to, who does a lot of supporting roles, but he also does a lot of Baroque. But his voice, he just fits his voice into how he feels he wants to go, and not necessarily the box that everybody is fitting to. So I thought that was something, like, for me, not necessarily performance wise, I loved learning about these very different careers that people are taking, and that I guess there's so many different routes that singers are taking now.
Yeah, and to tie into that, because I remember reading both interviews, which were amazing, that level of just originality that stems from their experience of training really nurtures their voice. And one can feel that. One can understand where they're coming from personally, emotionally. It's as though you can look into their eyes when they're performing and just know them as a friend. So I really respect you mentioning both of them, because, you know, that's what I'm always looking for. I'm looking to feel that. Did I get to know this person during their performance? Did I really get to enjoy their voice? And yeah, I agree.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
guess
mean,
that
like,
that go ahead. Go ahead, Frank. Go ahead.
no, I mean, like, same with Afton. Like, you're talking about your students, and you're talking about like being there. I guess, like, that's something really interesting that I mean, I feel like a lot of times when we're talking about career paths, we're talking about specific, like, this is how it's supposed to be. So you're a soprano, this is the following. I don't know if that's something that you like spoken to like a lot of students about.
I'm trying to think if we've really had that conversation. Um, I feel like my approach is more just like a holistic approach to teaching voice.
Hmm.
Um, and I do obviously throw some opera and art song into their repertoire, but um, I've never I've never had a student who specifically is like, I want to be the next whoever, or I want to sing Mozart or whatever that be. So it's always just kind of a mix and just like vocal literacy.
Hmm.
Um, so I haven't really had any experience with that, but I know what you mean, and it's interesting to see like the different routes people are taking with classical and pop music and
Hmm.
crossover and all the things.
Speaking of crossover, one of the most interesting experiences I had this year, performance-wise, and it's not specifically opera, but it was opera related because it was John Baptiste at the Metropolitan Opera. And I had never experienced anything like that. You know, it felt it was kind of I mean, there was no program. You know, they give us the program and we open it up. It's just John Baptiste at the Met. It's like, what is he performing? Doesn't matter. You know, he was just kind of improvising on the spot. And it was the kind of performance where it's just an artist feeling out his audience, with being in tune with his audience and kind of just mirroring them in a way. At one point, he started kind of riffing on the Fur-Elise Beethoven and kind of just breaking down why that piece works and in conversation with the audience. And I just couldn't, I didn't know what to expect. And I couldn't, you know, it took me a while to process, but I'm just there and I'm watching how enraptured this audience was. And it wasn't a very long performance either. There was no intermission. Everyone was just so immersed in the experience. You could feel the energy. It was a packed house. And, you know, I know that the Mets kind of, we talked about it with Fran on previous episodes, they're kind of shifting to bringing in more of those kinds of experiences into the house. It was really special to kind of be there and be like, you know what, like this house that's so famous for a specific kind of artistic expression can also be a place. You know, I mean, I mean, opera houses and concert halls are temples, right? And we're there worshiping music. Um, doesn't have to be one specific kind of music that you're worshiping in there. You can also have other kinds of. I mean, I bring this all to say that it was such a spiritual experience that I was like, wow, the Met is so much more. This venue is so much more. Music collectively is about so much more, and it can even just be an incredibly magnetic presence like John Baptiste improvising and just kind of being in the moment, just trying out different things. And it was really incredible, and I'm really happy that I was able to get that experience. I don't know that I would have gone to see him in another context. You know, the Met is somewhere that I go so often that having the opportunity to go there to see that was really special.
To tie into that, my experience at the Met for John Adams' El Nino felt immersive in that same way as what David was just mentioning. Whereas, you know, this whole new creative team that was brought in for that production went wild, and they went wild as a team. And that level of shared community, respect, acknowledgement, everyone gets, you know, to partake in enjoying the creative process was mind blowing. So I'll tie that in with an experience at the Met that blew my mind.
I think going back a little bit to, I mean, you know, crossover, I love crossover. I think we talked about and like what could be done to bring shape audiences. I mean, you know, I think that there's always a very big different way in which like a pop concert is done versus an opera concert. You know, I mean, I this year I went to see Dua Lipa, and you know very well that the experience is going to be something different because there's an interaction with the public that you don't necessarily have in an opera hall or space like that, because you don't necessarily see those singers, you know, interacting. And personally, and it's interesting because I don't mind when a pop singer like asks you to sing along or, you know, claps or whatever, but I kind of like have this really fascinating thing that when I go see a classical music concert, I kind of don't want any of that. I just want to feel like I'm immersed into the experience. It's very weird. And so this past week, I was at a Holiday Joy concert, and there was two soloists, operatic soloists, and and what they did was they fused the concert in such a way that the one piece finished, and then they came in, the next piece finished, and it just felt like it was a theatrical experience within a concert, and I just thoroughly enjoyed that. And the thing is, the singers, they communicated what they were giving uh to the audience, and so I felt like even though they weren't necessarily talking to the audience, they were communicating. And I think that that's also another way of bringing in. And I think that when I go see an operatic performance, they're not going to stop, I don't know, to explain the plot. You have to be immersed into the actual performance. And I think that that's what, for me, makes a great artist and also a great performance. Um, so, like, for example, I was just thinking about, like, the things that I had seen this year, and, like, the performances, and that I was, like, thinking, and I was like, who were those, like, really great artists? And, like, what were, like, the great, like, performances that I went to? And the two that really came to mind, and I think read a lot, you'll get to read it more when we, as a company, release our list of favorite performances. I mean, the two that really came to mind were Arabella at the Met and Rosenkavalier in Zurich. Um, and it was interesting for two different reasons. Rosenkavalier, and we talked about it a few podcasts ago, is it's not an opera that I actually adore or love, but for the first time ever, and I think it was because the space helped, because it's like this very small jewel box, which is Zurich, such a small, intimate space. For the first time ever, I was able to feel everything that the characters were going through. And the production, which is just so magical and so, like, visionary, was interesting. And I just was sucked into the actual work in a way that I had never been in my entire life. And I've seen so many performances at the Met, and never once did I feel like I was interested in what was going on. But this was the first time ever. And it was all the entire cast was amazing. The conducting, the production, just all worked. And Arabella is a work that I love, and it's a very intimate work. But the conducting brought me in, uh, and then the cast, and they weren't necessarily, like, doing so much in terms of, like, acting, but it was in terms of, like, moving. I think that it was that everything was so intimately put together. The production work by Otto Schenk, and I just felt like I was zapped into I was just brought into every emotion, and I felt that communication that Dave was talking about with John Baptiste, or like that I felt with the pop concert. I just felt like I was being brought in such a way that so few performances for me did it. And that's not to say that they didn't. It's just certain performers. Like, sometimes when I go to performances, I'm like, that performer was just the entire night. And then when I have to see someone else, it just takes me out of it. And so those two, I think, were just so complete for me, because there were other performances that I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But amazing not necessarily for the entire thing, but amazing because I was watching someone, like, do something that I was just riveted by.
I was actually sitting, like, in row C in orchestra, so I was literally right there. And I have to say that at the Met, and being in that house and kind of sitting in all over the place throughout my life, I'd never actually sat that close to the stage. And it was actually really interesting to hear the way the sound projects differently, so up close. And you start to realize, like, damn, the acoustics in that place are really, really special. Um, because it sounds very different when you're right there. But I mean, and when I look back at my journey through opera in 2025, and I think it would be really cool if each of us, kind of just did a quick little look back. My year didn't actually start off super great because I was at the AIDA New Year's Eve last year when, unfortunately, Piotr Viczawa shouldn't have sung. But in looking back, it's been an interesting year in which, you know, if I come full circle, and I will, Viczawa started off awful, for lack of a better word. And the last thing I've seen was on Chenier. I saw it twice. It was so good. And he was stellar in both of them. He was even better the second time I saw him. but there's been a lot of really interesting conversations around this experience of opera this year. We were in Berlin in February with Francisco. We got to see two productions, both of them pretty much emblematic of Regie Theater conception of German art, you know, as a dialogue, as a necessary for metaphor in the opera and a way you direct opera. You know, we saw Rusalka, we saw Turandot, both of them very eye-opening productions, very fascinating. I think the Rusalka, which was so abrasive in the first two acts, because it literally takes place in an, I guess you could call it a New York, stuffy New York apartment, transforms into something surreal by the end that was so fascinating for me that I just couldn't stop thinking about it, you know. And the Turandot before it was much more, you know, the metaphor there was much more about totalitarian government, right, and performance for the party leader, you know. And we talk constantly on OperaWire about, I mean, we reference a lot of things that are going on internationally, you know, a lot of the theater that goes on for certain regimes, and how artists are actually used as puppets. And this Turandot could not have been a better metaphor for that. But, you know, going through that, like one of the other big highlights for me, and I know Jen had an experience with it, was the Zauberflöte at the Met, which is one of my favorite productions that they've done in a long time. It's an incredible piece of art, and it's just beautiful, and that's a beautiful opera. And then, you know, if I look at the totality of the year, I mean, Sonia Yoncheva really surprised me this year. She's an artist that I had a lot of respect for as an entrepreneur, as a musician, as just a person who knows her, who doesn't know her place, who created her place, who's creating her place, who's establishing, here I am. But someone who, as a singer, I didn't always like love everything that she did. But this year, I saw her in Queen of Spades, which I saw in Queen of Spades, and
We
I
saw her
saw
in Queen of
her.
Spades together.
We saw her in Queen of Spades, and we saw her in André Chenier, and she is an artist that I just, you know, for me, if I had to say who's my artist of the year, of the experiences that I witnessed, she would be that. Because the three times that I saw her this year were simply, I mean, just so much confidence on stage and such a putting it all out there kind of artistry, you know, just caution to the wind, just pure vocal magic. For me, that would, if I had to highlight one artist this year that really, I mean, and then there's Bichala, who did the 180 for me, from one of the most embarrassing opera experiences I've ever had to two of the most riveting performances I had this year. That's my operatic journey from this year. And I mean, I just love to hear what you guys went through. And I mean, also I love to, yeah, just kind of hear those things that just stood out along the way.
So
Well,
I
I mean, I
think,
think I was just Afton.
so I think so the concert that I saw with Emma Pennell was on the Truth and Reconciliation Day, and so it started out with indigenous music in the native language and not operatic at all, indigenous instruments, and yeah, it set that space you were talking about where it felt like this like spiritual like environment, and it was really interesting to hear and feel like the shifts in performance. So like going from the indigenous music to there was a choir, and then the solos, and then it closed with the original performer. But it was just really interesting to see how the different types of music still like brought you in and like came like to be cohesive. Um, and that's really what I'm like excited about learning in the next year, um, and just being in a different music scene and culture and learning like how opera is up here.
I was actually gonna ask later on, but I want to kind of go through just want to go through one little thing about each person's journey. Thanks, Afton. I was actually gonna ask about what are you guys looking forward to next year?
For me, as I said, Arabella and Rosencavalier were very spiritual experiences for me. But I think it's really interesting because I remember starting off the year with two of my favorite performers, and that was Rigoletto with Luca Salsi, which I was really excited to be able to see him do this work, which he's so well known for. And also being able to experience him in a different space than La Scala, because I had mostly seen him there. And also to experience Sandra Aronofsky's Tosca for the second time, and seeing how this woman has just grown from, into this diva who is like, you know what, I'm at a point in my career where I'm just going to take all the risks in the world and just do it. And I think that Tosca was so riveting because um all three performers, Brian Jade and Bryn Tervel and Sandra, were just like taking so many risks that some of them may have been a little bit over the top, but then most of them were just a lot of fun to watch and unpredictable. So I really just enjoyed that start of the year. And then, seeing this real Reggie theater for the first time was like I was being knocked off a cliff and like basically being put into a circumstance that I was like not necessarily used to. But I guess it opened my eyes to the fact that anything is really possible when you want to do an experiment. Dave knows what a traditionalist I am when it comes to music. So all of a sudden, when I'm seeing this um, production that cuts the second act in half, I was like, so like, you gotta be kidding me. I was so upset because I love that second act of Rusalka, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Just destroyed the music like that. So that was just eye opening. But it also just taught me like you have to just be very open minded to the way that things are going to be like shown, and that you just never know how anything is going to be, especially when you're away from your safe space, which is like the New York theaters in a more traditional way of presenting music. But then, as the season went on, I mean, I remember going to see Aida for the second time. It was a different cast, and Alina Garancha was returning to the Met for the first time in, I don't know, like a few years. And that was amazing and it goes back to like, these are like the performers that just stood out for me. And she was just scene stealing in every performance. And I remember Barbara Seville, and I hadn't seen that production in a while, and Aigul Machina was fantastic. And I remember seeing the Carmen it was last season or 2 seasons ago, and I said, "Oh, I'm not really sure what exactly I'm watching." But then I saw her as Rosina, and I'm like, "Okay, now I understand why she is the real deal and why she is like being touted as the next big star." And I was very happy to be able to experience that. And then you go to see opera in different places, like, and like you were saying, Afton, like you're seeing this recital by Emma Panel, and like what you were saying, Jennifer, like about going and seeing Macerata. And then I went to Venice and I went to see this Tosca, and my partner continues to talk about this luxury car, and I'm just like, I don't understand why you're so obsessed with this car. But then I realized, well, opera hits so differently for everyone, and what they like about different things and how they feel it, like impulses. So he was talking about this car, and he continues to talk about this, and it brought it such an impression, and that's why he loved this production, because it was lavish and because it brought Tosca to a different setting. And I said, I don't really get it, but okay, like if you liked it, then I'm happy to have experienced that with someone who enjoyed this Reggie theater in a different way. And then I went to see so I saw the Zurich Rosenkavalier, which was amazing. Like I just talked about. I saw an open rehearsal of Manon, and I didn't seen an open rehearsal in a while. And I was experiencing Zurich for the first time, and oh my God, I wish I would have seen the actual performance, because the dress rehearsal was amazing. And I said, oh, this is some of the best. And that was with Lisa Oropeza and Benjamin Bernheim. And that was great. And I loved, and then I got to see Ballo in Maschera. I went to the Teatro San Carlo I went back to the Teatro San Carlo, and I got to see Ballo in Maschera. I hadn't seen that opera or I hadn't seen that opera in a traditional production. But what's funny is here at the Met, we have this very Recce theater production. And I'm like, I just don't like that production. And then I got to see this traditional production that's been around forever. And I was excited, a traditional production, and I did not like the production. I said, "What the heck is this stale production with these ugly costumes?" And thankfully, I got thankfully Ludovic Tetsier and Anna Trepko were riveting and amazing in the production. But I said sometimes it's sometimes you want to see these traditional productions, and then you realize, oh wait, no, I actually want to see something more interesting. So I guess my all that to say is, I was filled with like traditional and Reggie theater, and I got to the point of thinking, well, what I thought I loved and I thought I really just enjoy traditional productions, I soon learned to myself that that's not necessarily true. That I kind of am more of a I like to see great theater, and when I say great theater, I guess it's about being immersed in that theater, in that space. Because like even with the Andrés Chenier that I got to see twice, what I realized about that production, and it's a lovely production, and everybody should go see it on HD because the cast is very good, is I prefer sometimes like I love traditional productions, but I sometimes feel like too much open space can sometimes hurt a performer or a production. And I also learned that I like less movement and much more stillness, because I think when there's a stillness to it, I think it also adds more to the performer. So I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but there's a lot of things like I felt when I was watching performers and performances, and that I felt like sometimes less is more. I think that's what I would have really learned about going to the opera this year.
I saw the new production of Tannhäuser at the Sophia Opera Wagner Festival this summer, and professor and director Plamen Kartolov's eye and mastery for knowing how to incorporate, like what you were saying, those sort of meditative movements that a singer can do that just leaves it all on the stage for the listener, for the audience, also for their fellow colleagues. There was this beautiful, it was minimal, but it was also very brilliantly colored and vibrant set design, lighting. It just was a very like highly intelligent new production that I feel, with new productions, it can go one way and it could go another way. And this went this way. So I was like really impressed by that. And then also with the pacing, I wanted to tie in Cendrillon at Versailles was very fast paced. This was like authentic French comedy. Like there was always some joke happening, and there was glitter, there were tons of colors, there were all of these facial expressions, and it was just like a very rapid moving, high energy setting. And so I feel like there is again that fine line of balance, like what you were mentioning, Fran, that either you can get carried away with, or you can get weighted down by, or it's that magical thing. It's that intangible magical thing that can happen. And so, yeah, those are the two that like really stuck out to me this year.
As we're looking to wrap this up, let's look forward to next year. What are some hopes that we each have for, or some of the, just things that we're excited to see if we have that in our purview, or, things that we might look into. Let's start with Afton.
I'm really looking forward to learning more about the opera scene here in Canada. I would love to see anything at the Canadian Opera Company. Their performances are always really, like reading the reviews or watching like their Instagram posts and things. I just love like the colors that they're using and the different, like the new styles that they're using, and I really want to see something there. But I'm also really excited to like see other like smaller recitals and things, being back in a university setting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
I think that there's a lot of really interesting opera movement that's definitely going on over there. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to move around the provinces and find the different smaller companies and everything too. Yeah.
I have to say that like in this past year, we in particular have had a lot more contact with like companies like Operatic and companies like Edmonton Opera or Vancouver and Calgary Opera too. I mean, there's so many, and I know that that's Alberta, not Ontario, which is where you are.
Yeah.
But it is kind of shocking to see, um, and this is constantly, this is a reminder for all of us, like there's a lot of opera going on everywhere. You know, in New York, there's like a massive opera, it's a much bigger opera scene than we realize. That's throughout the States. But in like, you know, in Canada, I was kind of also surprised where even within cities, there's multiple companies. Um, you know, and it's always fascinating to discover new ones. So I'm excited to see what you discover up there in Canada, Afton.
I recently learned that there is a an opera guild that will like charter a bus to go
Hmm.
to either Ottawa or Canadian Opera Company. So I'm trying to get involved with that when my schedule allows. And um, yeah, no, it's fun to be in a new culture um, and learn what they're doing up here.
I look forward to what you discover and what you share. Jen,
Locally, I am always excited about Death of Classical and what they're up to. I feel that Andrew always has this magician hand that he just waves, and the experience is just like phenomenal. Incorporating, you know, local vendors and artists. Also tying in Greenwood Cemetery here in Brooklyn, with the catacombs, just really like having that one-on-one conversation artistically. I think he's absolutely nailed. And then internationally, you know, Sofia, Bulgaria again, going for the Wagner Festival and going back to Versailles and really documenting the evolution of opera that's happening. I just feel like there's such a resurgence, yes, on a broader scale, but also at like the DIY level, which is what you all were just talking about, where
mm,
everyone feels that they can have a moment to experiment with opera right now and do it as a community, express themselves personally. So I think my hopes for 2026 is that everyone continues to feel that their voice absolutely matters. Their voice deserves to be heard. And I'm excited to meet them. And, you know, I really don't want to get wrapped up politically, but I want the United States to really cultivate and nurture this creative mindset and to really give back to those that have the courage and bravery to put themselves out there in this way. So that's that.
awesome, awesome. Tran,
I mean, I wish I had something deeper to say because I feel like to come off of what Jen was saying, I mean, I don't have it like I mean, there's a lot of things that I do I'm really looking forward to. I mean, I have to say that I'm really looking forward to Tristan and Isolde because it's a work that I have not
that's my
seen in years. And it's one of my favorite works. If you listen to our podcast for the subscribers, you'll get to hear my top 5 operas. So I'm very much excited to actually see that work again. You know, I think thinking about that, that's probably what I'm most excited in terms of operatically. But I think what you were saying, Jen, and also what you were saying, Afton, I think it's really great to be able to explore and see what comes at you. Because, you know, like last year you got to do Sofia Opera in in um in Bulgaria, and you got to go to Versailles, and you got to go to Macerata, and I don't think that those were things that you were necessarily expecting, and that they just came to you. The same with like after you were doing this big move to Canada, and you're just starting to explore that. So I guess what I really look forward to each year is what thing randomly comes at me. You know, because I didn't expect to be going to Zurich for the first time this year, and I didn't expect that I was going to be going back to Venice and going to see La Fenice. So I guess I'm just going to let things flow and see what I become interested in. I hope to go back to La Scala at some point next year, and I hope to be able to go back to Arena di Verona maybe. I don't know. We'll see what the summer looks like. But for now, I'm just gonna say Tristan and Isolde. I'm excited. I hope to be able to see it more than once, and obviously you guys should. I mean, if you guys can go, you should definitely go. And I know Afton, you're in Canada, so HD is always is a possibility. I know they do that in around the world.
And maybe 2026 will be the year that I finally get to go to the Met.
Yeah,
I say that
come
every year,
on.
it hasn't happened yet, but
That would be great. That would be great. I'm gonna piggy off my brother. Tristan is definitely the opera I'm looking forward to the most. But I'm also really interested in Innocence, which is
Okay.
having its premiere at the Met. It's a to piggy off what Jen was talking about. It's a socially relevant piece that speaks to real complicated issues that we're having in our country right now. And I think it is really important. That the opera world evolves, continues to evolve in 2026. I'm looking forward to what we discover, what new artists come to the fore, what artists we get an opportunity to see again and potentially reevaluate and discover anew. And I'm hoping that, 1 year from now, we're able to do this again, and all of us have had an incredible experience that we can talk about again. So I just want to kind of wrap things up and thank Afton and Jennifer for joining us on this episode. This will be the first of many times we will come together. And of course, thank you, Fran. I'm very thankful for our audience. This will be our final podcast of 2025. So we're looking forward to continuing to bring you more podcasts in 2026, more OperaWire news, more reviews, more interviews, more opera. And I just want to thank everyone for listening. And, we look forward to seeing you at the opera.
And for more information on OperaWire, check out our Twitter, our Threads, our Facebook, and our LinkedIn page. Also follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And we hope to see you in 2026. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our writers who contribute generously to the magazine and who make OperaWire what it is.
And thank you to our readers, our dedicated readers that take the time to really invest their energy in reading and sharing the enthusiasm that OperaWire really wants to continue to bring.